Hello, my fabulous AP students. For this mini unit, we're going to be focusing on analyzing poetry. And this is, like I said, just a mini unit to kind of dip our toes in that beautiful world that is poetry and to kind of get started and used to analyzing poems. And as we go through, some will be abstract, some will be more concrete, but there's various methodologies. And so I'm going to teach you one called TP-CASTT. And this is just kind of as a guide to help you think about the stuff you should hit when you go through a poem. Now, for this activity, you'll find it as a PDF, and you'll notice that it has two poems. The first one that you and I will do together, that also comes along with a chart to fill out, and then a second poem by Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken, as well as another one to fill out as well. You can print this out and take pictures of the annotations, or you can do it digitally. It's entirely up to you. So you do what helps you understand this best, okay? Then you'll practice this with a couple different poems and ultimately create a one-pager activity to showcase your learning for your favorite one, all right? So as the directions state, we're going to read and annotate the following poem using the comment feature. So this is the comment feature and highlighting tool is what you would use when it comes to doing this digitally. Otherwise, you can just do it on paper, okay? Then we're going to run it through the TP-CASTT method and record our findings on the chart, okay? So there's a couple different steps. Before I even jump into any poem, I like to personally, just to help me, I like to number the lines of verse and the stanzas. So remember, verse are each line, and stanzas are like the paragraphs of a poem. So I start usually on the side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I do this to help me reference later on. So I can be like, in line 6, and I go from there. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. All right. And then I notice that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 total stanzas. Because we first look at poetry with our eyes, obviously. Common sense, you're reading it, but you take a look at its form and its structure. So this one I'm already noticing before I even jump into reading that each stanza is only 3 lines of verse, except for the last one, it's 4 lines. All right. So this gets me all set up. All right. Now, when we do the TP-CASTT method, it stands for title, paraphrase, connotation, attitude, shifts, title again, and theme, which I know sounds weird. And we're going to take these one at a time. So the first thing we do is we focus at the title. And this title is Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night by Dylan Thomas. From 1914 to 1953 is his lifespan. So if you see that outside of a poem, that's just letting you know when this author was around. And this can also give you a little bit of a hint as to what might have inspired the poem. All right, so if you take a look at this time frame, what's going on during this? Well, this happened during World War I and World War II, so you might see elements of that within there. So think about those historical pieces. But the first thing you do is title, all right? So for title, we start to look at this and we start to think about what it could possibly mean. So do not go gentle into that good night. Perhaps when somebody talks about going gentle, and they don't want you to go, I start to think about, don't give up without a fight, is what it could be possibly meaning. So for the first set of title, you start to look at it and possibly see what the title could be hinting about the poem. It could also be about partying and living it up. You don't want to go gently into the night. Nighttime is typically when people tend to gather and have fun and, rage and all that other fun stuff. So it could be about living it up. So for the title, you'll essentially put down what you think the title means. What do you think the poem's going to be about based on the title? Okay. Our next is paraphrase. And this is more along the lines of here. So it's especially important to paraphrase line by line for older poems. They can probably be slightly shorter for newer poems, but paraphrasing is basically what you're going to do is put the lines in your own words. Okay, so what are they talking about? So, again, step one, look at the title. Step two, start to paraphrase. Now, I like to do several reads. You cannot do poem analysis and only read it once. It's not possible, nor should you. It actually takes away a lot from the poem. You should read it easily 2, 3, 4 times. So now there are exceptions for epic poems and things like that, but typical poems you should do several reads. So let's read it just to get the feel and the vibe first, and then we'll go through and paraphrase. So this is, again, do not go gentle into that good night. Now, as we go through, a couple things to also think about is the speaker is not the same as the author. Okay? They're two separate people. Always remember that when it comes to poetry. Okay? The punctuation gives you the pacing. Okay, so read from punctuation piece to punctuation piece. Don't necessarily stop at the end of lines. Stop and pause at pieces of punctuation. Okay, so those are some special things to note and know about poetry. Okay, all right. Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night by Dylan Thomas. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. The wise men at their end know dark is right. Because their words have forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late they grieved it on its way, do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay, rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Beautiful flow. This is actually one of the, I'm sure you probably have heard this poem quoted somewhere, or might have heard one of these lines, especially like rage, rage against the dying of the light, or do not go gentle into that good night are two lines that you might hear popping up. So we then want to go through and paraphrase these pieces. So, do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. So, do not go gentle into that good night is, so sounds like it's saying fight against the night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Okay, so it sounds like old age should burn and rave at close of day. So, sounds like old age will come with time, is how I'm reading that. And I'm going to do the shorthand. So please know that when you're doing these, this is based on your interpretation. Poems, there's no specific right or wrong. And the poet's background, your experiences are going to affect how you interpret this. Okay? Rage, rage against the dying of the light. So fight against. So the dying of the light sounds like fight against time. It almost sounds like. The wise men at their end know dark is right. So even smart people know that death comes. because their words had forked no lightning. So they do not go gentle into that good night. So right here, this chunk, be like, because their words had forked no lightning, kind of sounds like they haven't made a spark. So their words did not impact or leave a spark, so they fight death. Because I'm getting this vibe that night, and knowing symbolic elements, night and death can tend to go hand in hand. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay, rage, rage against the dying of the light. So good men cry and complain about how their simple deeds would have been better under certain conditions. They fight death. Okay. So normally when I do a poem, I usually only go this in depth when I'm trying to translate a poem that's probably in older English or modern English. This one seems a little bit more common sense, so I might simplify this into summary as opposed to paraphrasing, but essentially the paraphrase part is trying to get you to tell what story is it telling. So when it comes to paraphrase, think about what story is told. Not message, not theme, story. What story is it telling? They kind of go hand in hand, but they are different. Okay. So we have wise men, good men, wild men. So wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight. Even the wild ones, wild, untamed ones, learn too late, they grieved it on its way. So learn about death too late. We'll still fight it. Okay. Grave men, near death, whose blinding sight, let me take that back. Grave men, near death, who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay, rage, rage against the dying of the light. So grave men could be one of two things. It could be either serious or dead. Okay. Based off of that word. So I'm going to go with probably serious men who are on their deathbed, who see with blinding sight, who see life as it is. So who see through everything. Blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. So they could see through stuff and finally be happier. Now remember, knowing that this time frame, because we know there's multiple connotations to the words, gay in this instance, knowing the time frame indicates happy. So they long, it's almost like they long for happiness. And they fight death. So far I'm seeing in this, there's like a list. They're just listing off these different type of people that you can come across and what they've done. You know, yes, these wise men even know that their words haven't really affected anything. They want to stay on until it does. Good men, you know, who then when I see good men, I might think of like soldiers or other people and I think of that because their frail deeds, you know, your fights might have danced in a green bay, meaning like it could have shone through and been more powerful in a different situation. I start to get this image of like when like older generations sit around and talk about days of past and how, back in my day, like that's the kind of vibe I get from this chunk. Then you got the wild man, the crazy ones, the good who die young, who caught and sang the sun in flight. So these are the people always running, chasing, having fun, but they learn too late what life is really like, and they still don't fight it, or they still fight death. Do not go gentle into that good night. These people, he's like, all these people, they fight death. So let's see this last one. This one visually is longer than the other ones. So we know that this one's going to be slightly different. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. So right here, I'm getting this vibe that dad is on his deathbed. Oop. Sorry. Deathbed. Son is praying for him to fight death. Okay, so this is my paraphrased portion. All right. Now, typically, I might write this as notes later on or make a note somewhere else, but I did go more in depth so you can see how my brain interprets this piece. I also wrote it down so you can see what I was talking about. Typically, I would use these open space to, annotate. So now that we've done our paraphrase, and remember, you can put it in your own words, and it's very important to do a line-by-line paraphrase in your own words when it's an older poem, like I said, older English, like prior to 1800s and before, things like that. But the big thing is to focus on what story is told. Now, connotation is next. And connotation, when we hear connotation, we think about like word meanings, but this one's actually just focusing on, think more along the lines of devices. Okay. What is used and what is the effect, the effect of it. Like why? All right. So looking at this guy, I can then take a look at the different devices. So one of the easy devices to look at is the endings to see if there's any rhyme. So we have night, day, light. So night, and the way we indicate rhyme is by labeling it with letters of the alphabet. So night and light rhyme, so I'm going to put them as A's. Right, night, light, these all rhyme together. So anything with that rhyming scheme, I'm going to put as A. Light, night, still all sight, light, height, A. Okay. Day, they, bay, way, gay, pray, all rhyme. So this is going to be B. So what I'm seeing here is a rhyme scheme of A, B, A. Okay. You might also have heard of A, B, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, C, A, B, C. It varies. Now, if this were a different sound, then this would change to C, D, C. Do you see where I'm going with that? So, but I labeled them all A's because they all are the things that rhyme together. Okay. So it might just be for a pleasing sound. Night, light, right. That also, though, that hard T sound, it kind of feels like a punch, right? So maybe they have maybe this author created that hard T sound to like really nail in the point. Okay. I might look into other devices, right? So there's rage, 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 rage. So we have repetition. So we have, and I might abbreviate that as a repetition, and it might be emphasizing the importance. I'm not just going to leave it at emphasizing. I need to emphasize what? Importance of holding on. Yeah, being a fighter. All right. I might focus on word choice like brave men. That's a pretty solid word choice right there, to focus on the serious and the dead, right? Blind eyes could blaze like meteors. We got a simile. And then, I don't want to just leave it as a simile. I want to put a word or something there to explain what I think it might be doing, and so on and so forth. So that would be the device or the connotation, focusing on all those different devices. I can go on, but this gives you an idea of how you should do it. Okay. There are some things I notice. There's some things that others notice. Feel free to utilize any guides that can help you. So on Google Classroom, you will find an activity, or not activity, a resource that is a link, I do believe, to Quizlet that has a bunch of different literary device terms that you can use to help you with this if you'd like. Please don't just look up the analysis of this, because then you're robbing yourself of the ability to practice this and think through, Attitude, we know, we again think about like the vibe or tone of this piece. So from hearing this, it kind of sounds very pleading, a little bit of sadness, because it sounds like his father is dying and he's trying to convince him. At the same time, I'm noticing it seems like it's almost like an argument, like he's trying to prove something, like trying to prove to his dad he needs to be a fighter. Okay. Now shifts is where like you get a change. Okay. Shifts tend to be they can be in tone, they can be in structure, they can be in, like I said, any mood or vibe, but sometimes you can see them with punctuation marks. And that doesn't mean that all punctuation marks are a shift. You will notice like when it feels different. It's when it feels very different from the rest. Okay. So if I take a look right here, these all kind of sound very pleading, but it's right here that I notice this bigger shift, right? And you, my father. It's the only one that doesn't start with the type of man. So I see a shift here, right? It seems to shift from a lecture to a plea, like a plea or a cry for help, like please help me. Usually when we talk about shifts, we indicate it by that like dash mark, okay? Because all of these have a very similar vibe. Now, there also is a shift right here, because right here it's like an intro, and then here's the evidence or their arguments, right? Because it's right here at this point that these men start to become listed. Okay. Finally, last couple pieces is that we take the look at the title again. After reading it, what have we discovered about the title? It might be similar to this, it might be different. And from the title, I'm now seeing do not go gentle into that good night is like a a son's plea to his father to fight either death because of old age, or maybe there's a disease. We don't know. We can make speculations. We would have to use the poem to prove our speculations, though. And finally, theme. Theme is what life lesson is this trying to prove? Remember, themes are never just a single word. Okay? We start with single words, and then we turn them into a phrase. And we want to make sure that they're not cliches. All right? Not like, live your life to the fullest and YOLO. Like, those are cliches. So taking a look at this, I would see, fighting and death. And it seems like the life lesson it's trying to teach through giving examples of all these men who continue to fight is no matter what your background is. Yeah, I can't spell when I'm writing in front of people. I'm sorry. Background is death should be fought. Okay, or you could say you need to make sure you live your life to the fullest so you leave with no regrets. Slightly cliche, but it's not like YOLO, you know what I mean? So keep those things in mind, all right? So that's kind of what you do with your annotations. You look for titles, think about like the story that's being told. Like I said, if you don't do it line by line, at least give a decent story summary. What story is this telling? Like this is saying, hey, while we all get old, you shouldn't just let death happen. Like, look at all these guys. These bros don't let death happen. But then, you know, you, dad, you're dealing with something right now. Don't go into that good night. Just fight it. Okay? I can then use these pieces of information to write if I have a specific prompt to go along with it. Okay? So your task, I want you to practice doing this exact methodology, okay, using typecast, just like that, using The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost, okay, doing it exactly like this. That's part one of this poetry practice, okay? Part two is then choosing a poem, all right? You are going to be given 6 different poems to choose from, okay? I would like you to read and annotate several of them. I want you to read all of them and choose maybe 1 or 2 to really dive into and annotate. And then out of those pieces, I want you to choose your favorite and create a one-pager. And one-pagers are essentially like a visual representation of the big elements of the poem. There is a PowerPoint breaking it down and talking about what should be on it. Some people might need an organization, but essentially you can put art pieces, quotes, and whatnot, design it on a page. There's templates like this, or you can just do it on a blank sheet of paper and take a picture and upload it. Or if you wanted to create it digitally, that is perfectly fine with me. So take a look at the one-pager information and see what you might want to do with the design. So you'll find, again, there's a PowerPoint explaining what a one-pager is, what's typically on them, an example organization that somebody had, as well as some picture examples. You're going to choose one of the 6 poems to create the one-pager on, but I would like you to read and practice annotating with that. Now, once you feel more comfortable with the typecast, the way practicing it like this, you don't have to follow it in order like that every time. I do, now that I'm more versed in my poetry and more comfortable with it, I always do what I started with. I do my numbers. I focus on what the title could be doing. I read it once for just enjoyment. And then I go through it again to start to look for devices and items within it. Okay, so that's your task. Poetry practice, dipping our toes in, seeing which ones speak to us. And remember, again, poetry is all about how we interpret it. All right. And I'm hoping you can find one that speaks to you.